Hello, hello. Can everyone hear me okay? If someone wouldn't mind typing in the chat that they can hear me, that would be helpful. Check the settings on my end. Looks like the microphone's working. Alrighty, we're going to go ahead and minimize this. Give it a couple seconds, let some people file in. If you're in the chat, feel free to say hello, introduce yourself. We'll be going till about 8:45 a.m. this morning, and then I will be having my live webinar for pokercoaching.com premium members at 9 a.m. Pacific. So if you want to join us that as well, if you are a member. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started here. Hello, Lucky Libra. So today, what we are going to be talking about is 5 tips to crush small stakes, no limit hold'em cash games. So we're going to be talking mostly about live cash games, and the 1-2, 1-3 level. This type of the 5 tips we'll be talking about work very well at 2-5 no limit as well. But a lot of the content here is kind of designed towards that like lowest level limit in the room, like 1-2 no limit. And I think these are, I'm going to say, 5 tips that you should be doing, but also it's kind of the opposite of what, when I was coming up with these, thinking about what the biggest mistakes people make. So it's correcting, I think, what the biggest underlying, mistakes people make, the easiest things I think they can fix in order to really generate a profit in these games, whether it's to become a losing player to a break-even player, a break-even player to a winning player, or a small winner to a big winner. I honestly think mastering and working on these 5 tips and focusing some studying around them will really help your win rate. So, 5 essential skills you must master to beat small stakes cash games, and the biggest population mistakes in no limit cash. Again, these will kind of work together. Um, and yeah, we'll just gonna jump into these one by one, no particular order. And we have a couple of hand examples, nothing like super complex. I just made some basic hand examples. So, number one, the number one thing that you can be doing in order to make more money and really control the game flow in these games and become more aggressive and punish players that call too much, which is often the leak you see in low stakes cash games. 3-betting linear ranges. Now, I play a lot of tournaments. Um, Tournaments right now are kind of where the boom are in poker. And in tournament poker, we get very, very used to 3-betting polar cash game ranges. Okay. Now, understanding in my previous one of these poker coaching videos, we did 3-betting polar ranges versus linear ranges and kind of talking about the difference of that. Does anyone in the chat understand, can describe what the difference is between a polarized 3-betting range and a linear 3-betting range? So a polarized range is going to be you 3-bet the best hands, you call the middle hands, and then you take like whatever the worst hands you're going to play, and you 3-bet those hands as well. So you're kind of polarized by three betting the top and the bottom of the pole, calling the middle, and hence being polarized. Now, a linear range, um, the best way to think about a linear range is a raise first in range. So when you raise from the button, which I have here on the lower right here of the slide, this is a button raise first in range. You raise from the top down. So you're going to raise, if you're raising 50% of hands, you're going to raise the best 50% of hands. You don't raise 9-3 off and fold 9-4 off. You don't raise 9-5 off and, fold 9-7 off. You raise the best hands in a linear fashion. There's no polarization um, in this range. It's built from the top down. Now there's some, 5-4 suited raises, but queen 7 off folds. And I think we can all understand why that would be the case. The 5-4 suited is raising due to the playability. It can make some big hands, straights, flushes, and it realizes equity better versus queen 7 offsuit. So we're building these ranges from linear, from top down. So how do you crush these players at 1-2 no limit that play too many hands out of position? Well, we 3-bet linear. So if they raise with 9-7 suited and call the 3-bet, if they raise with king 8 suited and call a 3-bet, if they raise with king jack offsuit and call a 3-bet, you don't really want to 3-bet polarized against those ranges when they're calling too much. What you would do is just take all the hands you're going to play and just start 3-betting them all. So 3-betting hands like pocket nines, 3-betting hands like queen jack suited, king jack suited, king 10 suited. And if you want to punish someone that's raising and calling a raise with, king jack offsuit, well, you start 3-betting king queen offsuit and ace jack offsuit and ace jack suited, and really just focus on making stronger top pairs. You make stronger draws and 3-betting much stronger ranges, linear ranges. So often what the downside is to a linear 3-betting range, or what the counter strategy is to a linear 3-bet range, is 4-betting. So the way you kind of counter a linear 3-betting range is you want to 4-bet. So if I'm 3-betting a hand like queen jack suited or king 10 suited or king jack suited or pocket nines, it really sucks when I get 4-bet, because I either have to call or make a fold depending on the stack sizes and the size of the 4-bet. Well, luckily at like 1-2, 1-3 no limit, 4-betting is very, very rare. Players don't tend to be too passive. They don't 4-bet enough. And so in that case, the counter strategy is really not used in the metagame. Therefore, players just don't adjust correctly to these linear 3-betting ranges because they just really call or fold unless they have a really strong hand. And so they play call fold, which is what you want when you're linear 3-betting ranges. So you want to 3-bet linear when players play call fold. You want to 4-bet or play more polarized 3-betting ranges when they're going to be 4-betting a lot. And that tends to happen in tournament poker a lot when you're playing with 30 or 40 big blinds. Doesn't happen as much when you're playing a cash game with 100, 200 big blinds. So players that don't fold the 3-bets, playing too many positions out of position, you really just want to play a lot less calls and 3-bet every hand that's playable in that spot. The other benefit of 3-betting is avoiding playing 6-way pots. And it's really, really difficult to win a 6-way pot, no matter your hand strength, just due to the principle of just having shared equity. The average equity for anyone in a 6-way pot is going to be, what is it, like 15%, 16%, something like that. So even if you have a stronger range than everyone, maybe you're only winning the pot 20 to 25% of the time. So it's just really hard to win these multi-way pots. And by 3-betting a linear range, you're going to get more heads-up pots, and it's much easier to win pots and play in those situations. So we have an example hand here, and I popped it up in here. Let me make sure this is showing up correctly in my... can you guys see this hand okay in the live stream? I think you can, but let me double check on my end. Yeah, it looks like you guys can see it. Sorry, it's not the prettiest, but so in this hand we're playing 1-3 no limit. We have $500 here, and this player raises to $10, and we have the queen jack of spades. And I think a lot of people would tend to just call here And calling is fine. It's probably better than folding. Um, and I advocate here for a small three bet. You can make it $25, $30, something like that. And three betting a hand like King Jack suited, Queen Jack suited. I would three bet like pocket nines, pocket eights, Ace Queen offsuit, Ace 10 suited, and, something like that. Those would kind of be the borders of the range. So it's not like a super weak range or anything, but like you might be able to consider this as one of my bluffs pre-flop. So we raise to 30, and what we do is we knock all these players out. Maybe the cutoff had King Queen offsuit, would have called $10. Maybe the cutoff had Ace 3 of spades, and they would have called $10. Like these are good things for us that we knock out this equity. We're denying equity to these five players behind. Folds back. This player calls. We're not expecting a lot of folds, which is fine. We're in position. We don't mind. We get a very advantageous flop. When you're three betting a linear range, you're looking for high card flops. We don't three bet low cards very much. We want high card flops. We got two high cards here. Um, Very easy C bet. We just make a standard continuation bet, and we take it down with Queen Jack suited here. A spot where a lot of people I think will call the $10, go multi-way, and we don't have a backdoor flush draw. It becomes harder to bet, more difficult to navigate, and playing these you know linear three betting ranges like this example here, it's going to make you a lot more money at low stakes, no limit, in my opinion. The other thing too with three betting linear ranges is rake. And so in a 1-3 game, if we call $10 here and it goes to the flop, there's going to be $24 in the pot, but they're probably going to take $5 out of the pot because of the rake. And that's a pretty large percentage of the rake. So by three betting, we make the pot bigger. So one or two things happen. One, this player folds, and then usually there's no rake taken. Or two, when they call, it's still the same $5 rake, but it's a smaller percentage of the pot. So therefore, we end up paying less rake in terms of the percentage of the pot. So same thing applies with squeezing. So squeezing very linear ranges. So in this example, find hands here, here. So in this example here, we have Ace Jack of Hearts. Goes raise to 10, call, call. Very common spot here, and I think a lot of people might just call here. And again, very easy spot to squeeze. We make it $50 here with the Ace Jack of Hearts. And in this example, I just said we get folds, whatever. We might get calls, but I might develop a range like this on the right, where the red is the hands I squeeze with. So I just take my best hands, squeeze very linear: tens, jacks, queens, kings, aces, ace, king, ace, queen, ace, jack suited. Notice I don't call. The green is the call. The only hands I really call are the hands that play really well multi-way that can make nutted hands. So pairs that can make sets, some suited connectors that can make strong straights. This king 10, queen 10 might even be a little bit too weak. And then like suited aces are great because they make nut flushes over other flushes. So squeeze linear, call with hands like that are just very fit or fold that can make nuts over nuts, like ace high flush draws basically. Avoid calling here with 8-5 of hearts, because when you call with 8-5 of hearts, what happens is you get flushed over flush a lot. Okay, so linear ranges, that is tip number 1. Tip number 2, bet bigger. Tip number 2, bet bigger. Tip number 2, bet bigger. I'm going to say it 3 times because it's very important in all forms of poker, not just low limit cash games. Population does not bet big enough. And the reason is they have this, they have a hand and they want to get called. They're like, ooh, I want to get called by this hand. And what they fail to realize is that the correlation between bet size and fold percentage is not linear. Okay? So bet bigger. So we have a couple of math examples here to explain why we want to bet bigger and why small bets are normally not the most profitable bets to make. So, 1, you have the nuts. The pot is $100 and you choose to bet $50. So your opponent is going to fold 50, which is what you're risking. So you're risking here So let me explain this first. When you bet $50 and the pot is $100, you are risking 50 to win a total pot of 150. Okay? So you bet 50, and now the pot is 150. So 50 divided by 150 is 33%. So your opponent will fold 33% of the time from a mathematical standpoint. Okay? So when you bet 50 into 100, half pot, the numbers actually don't matter. As long as it's a half pot bet, your opponent's going to fold 1 out of 3 and fold 33% of the time. Now, why are they folding 33%? Because this is what makes your bluffs indifferent, because you're risking 1 to win 3, essentially. So they're calling basically to make it so that you can't bluff with any 2 cards. A little bit above the scope of this video, but I want to explain where these numbers come from. So you bet half pot and they're going to fold 33% of the time. So you win $50 when they call, and they call 67% of the time and fold 33% of the time. Now let's say the pot is $100 and you bet $100. Again, you still have the nuts. See, now you bet full pot. Now your opponent will fold 100 divided by 200, so 50% of the time. Okay, so notice here, our bet size doubled. Okay, the first example we bet $50. In this example we bet $100. So we're making 2 times as much money in the second example. And the opponent here folded 33% of the time. Here the opponent folded 50% of the time. Which one is more profitable? In both examples we have the same hand. Which one are we making more money in? This is a very critical, like, one of the more critical things to understand in no limit hold'em. Anyone in the chat have a guess? Which one is more profitable here? We're going to make more money when we bet full pot here, because the opponent is not folding twice as often. They're not folding twice as often, so we're going to get called 50% of the time. So the EV of this bet is $50, whereas here the EV of this bet is like $35 or whatever 67% of $50 is. So this bet is just way more profitable, and bigger bets in no limit hold'em are almost always going to be more profitable because of pot odds that are given to your opponents. In the fold percentage, again, I'm going to go back to the previous side because it explains it better. Correlation between bet size and fold percentage is not linear. So when you bet twice as large, your opponent does not get to fold twice as often. Okay? So we have a hand example here again. Bet sizing. Okay. All right, so here we have ace queen offsuit. We raise to $10, and the big blind calls, and it comes queen 7 deuce. We bet small on the flop. So on the flop, we want to bet everything in our range, so we end up betting small, and they call. Turn is a complete brick. We didn't get check raise on the flop. This player likely doesn't have pocket sevens, doesn't have pocket deuces, doesn't have queen 7, queen deuce. Maybe they could have 7-5 or queen 5, but this is a spot I see people bet too small here, and I would argue for like a pot size bet here. You could even overbet here, I think is reasonable, but betting very large here. We go for a $35 bet here. We can still get called by all the queen X. We should get called by some 7X. We can bluff very effectively. We get more value from our value hands, and we get more fold equity from our bluffs. The river is the deuce. We're not really worried about a deuce here. There's 105 in the pot, and again, we go for a very large bet here. We make it a pot size bet here. You get called, whatever this player has, queen jack, queen 10, queen 9, all these different, 7-5, which we beat now. But the point here is I see a lot of people here bet like $50 or $60 or $70 or $30. Big bets are often always going to be more profitable when you have a polarization advantage, when you have the nut advantage. When most of the time then when you had the betting lead on the previous street and nothing changed. Betting larger is almost always going to be more profitable because the fold percentage and is not linearly correlated with the bet size. Okay. So tip number 2, bet bigger, make more money. Yes, you will get called less often, but your bet will still make more money because they still have to call you a lot. And one of my favorite things is people say, well, they don't call if I bet really big. Okay, then bluff every single time. If they never call your bet when you bet big, then you just bluff every single time. And I would assume most of you do not bluff every single time. Therefore, there's not a congruent agreement with that statement that I hear a lot of time from people. Okay. All right. Number 3, bet folding is your friend. Okay. Bet folding. So this is a concept I learned a long time ago. When I was coming up in poker from Mr. Bart Hansen, it was a big proponent of bet folding. So players are often too scared to bet thin value and get raised off of equity. Population under bluffs and under invest in pots. Basically, I advocate for a bet relentlessly until you face resistance kind of strategy in these small stakes no limit games. And then this is one of the more important parts. Out of position after check check. That's what XX means. So after check check, like I say on the turn, if you have a hand that is strong enough to value bet, bet. Don't check. If it's not, check with the intentions to fold. Basically, because population under bluffs and under invest in pots, I want you to avoid bluff catching as much as possible. So when you have a hand that's strong enough to bet yourself, don't put yourself in a spot where you turn that hand into a bluff catcher. So we're going to look at the next hand as an example of this. Okay. Oops. Spoiler. All right. So we have Jack 10 of clubs. The button raises to $10. We call. We could 3-bet. And the flop comes King 6 deuce with 2 clubs. We check. They bet 10. We go ahead and call. Good raise. Good call. Go for a call. Turn is the Jack of hearts. Check. Check. Okay. Now this is the important part in the hand here. The button checked back. Okay. So this is kind of an inflection point here, and it's a very, very important spot because the button has to bet their very strong hands here in order to grow the pot. In position here, there's no other way for them to get money in the pot without growing. So we can eliminate hands like ace king, king queen, maybe king 10, king 9, some of the stronger king X hands from the range. We can certainly eliminate king jack, king 6, king deuce, pocket deuces, pocket 6s, pocket jacks, pocket kings, this player, pocket aces. We can eliminate a lot of really, really strong hands from the button here. They're going to have a lot of medium strength hands here. Okay. The river is a deuce here, and I strongly advocate to bet for value here with your Jack 10. Okay, and the reason I advocate for betting for value here is if we check, the button gets to is naturally going to polarize. What do I mean by that? If we check here from the big blind, the button's going to check back hands like ace queen, ace 10. 7-6, 8-6, pocket 7s, pocket 5s, pocket 4s, pocket 3s. Maybe they check back Jack 8, Jack 7, pocket 10s, pocket 9s. All these types of hands. What's it's a lot of hands that we beat, right? A lot of hands that we're ahead of here. We're very likely to win the pot here with Jack 10. Now they could have King 5, King 4, a weaker King X hand or something like that. Definitely could have a weaker hand like that. However, we want to extract value from these weaker hands in the range. So we go for a small to medium bet here. Being out of position, smaller bets are a little bit more acceptable here. Because if we check here, this is the other thing. If we check here and this player bets, they're probably not betting, maybe they bet a jack here and we chop, but they're probably not betting pocket 8s. So it's like our hand just turns into a bluff catcher because they're probably betting a king or better here, or pocket queens or better. But when we do this, we can extract value from pocket 7s, pocket 8s, pocket 9s, ace highs, Lots of hands that we can extract value from here, and it's like very, 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 very important to be value betting here rather than just checking and calling. There's some more complicated math stuff that goes on with that, but betting here vastly, vastly outperforms checking. As a general rule, if you have a hand that has more than, let's say, 60% equity and a lot of spots out of position after it goes check, check on the turn, you want to just be betting small. All right, a common the block bet that you hear about. Versus if you have a hand with less than 60%, those are probably the hands you want to bluff catch with. So a hand like ace high here, a hand like maybe a pair of sixes here, pocket fours. Those are the types of hands you want to bluff catch with. And like a pair of jacks or better is the hands you want to value bet with here. So when you check and you face like a $30 bet here, there's really not much difference here between jack 10. So if we were to check here and this player bet $30, $40, there's really no difference between jack 10 and ace queen, because both hands are likely bluff catchers. So it's very important to identify hands that if they're strong enough to value bet, and hands that are make as better bluff catchers in spots, and people tend to bluff catch way too much. All right, and then we have another example here. Sorry, made these slides a little bit ago, so I forgot. So another example. We have pocket fours, same spot, button raises, we call. Same flop, king six deuce, just different suits. And we check call with the pocket fours. Turns a jack, check check. This looks very familiar. And now here with deuces, with the deuce on the river, I do not think that pocket fours are strong enough to value bet here. If we bet here, I think we run in too much to like a hand like 7-6 or 8-6 or ace-6, pocket sevens, eights, nines, tens, maybe pocket queens, maybe a jack. There's just too many hands that beat fours, and I don't think we have enough equity here to bet. This hand probably has somewhere around maybe 40 to 50% equity. So it's not strong enough to value bet. So as the rule that we mentioned before, we're going to check with the intention of check folding against a lot of players that are just not aggressive enough. So when we check and we face this $30 bet, if we go back to the slides here, in my opinion, players under bluff and under invest in pots. Therefore, this betting range is likely going to be too strong in my opinion, and we go for a fold here now with pocket fours. Okay, so we're really just like not check calling very much, which yes is exploitable, but I don't think is going to happen that much at these stakes. And I think here in like we're still getting a lot of value from fours because it's just going to go check check a lot when they have ace queen, ace 10, pocket threes. Like when it goes check check enough here, we should just win this pot a decent amount, where checking still generates a lot of EV here with pocket fours. All right, number 4, learn to navigate multi-way pots. So multi-way pots play a lot like, kind of like super deep stack no limit hold up, where you tend to have a lot more caution. It's important to remember that in a multi-way pot, all hands have less equity. So when there's 4 players in the pot, the equity is split among 4 players. So it's a 25% average equity versus when it's split between 2 players, it's 50% average equity. So weak top pairs tend to suck in multi-way pots. Draws to the nuts are very good, strong 2 pairs. Just remembering there's a very high likelihood someone has a strong hand in a multi-way pot because there's more ways, more combinations to make 2 pair. So in multi-way pots, just as quick little tidbit rules: 1, avoid playing non-nutted hands multi-way. So hands like 9, 8, like 9 high flush draws, 10 high flush draws, lower flush draws, hands that draw, like for example, let's say the flop is 10, 9, 4, and you have 8, 7. That draw goes way down in value multi-way, but it's a very strong draw heads up because on the jack, now you have to worry about king queen, which is a very likely hand that probably all the players in the hand can have. So avoid non-nutted hands multi-way. Be careful of small pairs and small suited connectors if you're not comfortable post flop, because you increase the chance of set over set and flush over flush. So until I would recommend in a lot of spots, if you're not comfortable playing post flop, let's say you have a hand like it goes raise, call, call, and you have a hand like pocket deuces, pocket threes, pocket fours, pocket fives, it might be beneficial to just fold in those spots. They're not worth a lot because it's very difficult to set overset someone in these spots, and but it's very easy to get set overset. And also, if you think about multi-way pots, as I mentioned before, top pairs go down in value. So in a heads-up pot, when you flop a set, you can extract a lot of value from top pair. Well, in a multi-way pot, it's harder to extract value from top pair because top pair is not as strong of a hand. So it's, when you end up getting a lot of money into the pot, it becomes a lot more that set over set situation or flush over flush situation. So best way is avoid multi-way pots. That's why we started with number one, which is 3-bet linear ranges, and it's very difficult to win 6-way pots and playing hands that make the nuts. So nuttiness becomes much more important in these multi-way pots. So we have a hand example here. Let's see here. That's not it. Yes, this one. All right. It's in this hand. Goes raise, call, call. And sure, we flick it in with ace-10 offsuit. This is probably pretty close to a fold if you want to fold pre-flop. Again, this hand pre-flop is very, very, I'd probably actually advocate for folding here. And I don't think a lot of people will fold here. It's just very difficult to win a 5-way pot here with a hand that's really just never can make the nuts here. So call. It comes 10-9-6, and it goes bet, call, call. And what do you guys want to do here with ace-10? So I'm advocating for, I think this is a very, very easy fold here in this spot. And the reason is there's basically no card on the deck that is going to be beneficial for you to help you win this pot. The only one really is there's the ace of clubs and even the ace of diamonds is going to bring a second flush draw. But there's really only two cards that really help you here. Even a 10 could be dead. You could be dead already to 10-9, 7-8. Pocket nines, pocket sixes, So really here you want to be drawing to the nuts. A hand like maybe queen jack, ace high flush draws, two pairs or a set that can draw to the nuts. You want to be very, very careful in these types of spots. I would much rather call with 10-8 here than ace-10. Back to here. You see that example again. So yeah, being very, very careful in multi-way pots were hands that can draw to the nuts. Hand number 5. Learn absolute versus relative hand strength. Okay? So absolute versus relative hand strength. So what I'm talking about here is absolute hand strength is your hand value in a vacuum. So you have top pair, second pair, third pair, you have a set, you have a flush, you have full house. Absolute is a way to kind of just quickly gauge where your hand is on the poker, strength chart. Relative hand strength, really takes the board in. So a set in no limit hold'em is a very strong hand because it's very hard to make. But a set on pocket nines on 10, 9, 8, 7 with three spades is more of a medium strength hand, maybe even a weak hand. And relatively there on that board, a set is not a very strong hand. So you really want to be careful of and recognize absolute versus relative hand strength. And so the mistake that this like tip comes from is, you see people a lot of the times they're like, well, I have a set, I can't fold. But it's like, well, your set's really just not that strong of a hand here, so you should fold. So um, you really want to learn to analyze situations to tell if you are bluff catching or not. So what bluff catching is bluff catching is when you do not beat any value bets, meaning they cannot value bet a worse hand. This is probably could just be a tip on itself, is learn to analyze whether you are bluff catching or not, or identify bluff catchers. Um, Also, learning to analyze if in these situations are players likely to find enough bluffs. All this comes down to being able to make large folds in situations um, with strong hands. So that's where this tip is coming from. Being able to fold strong absolute hand strengths because of the situation, learning how to identify bluff catchers, learning how to identify situations that are probably under bluffed. So we have a hand situation here. So let me pull up this hand example. So we have pocket jacks and we raise and we get called from the cutoff and the big blind. Comes queen jack 5 with two hearts. We go for a bet and we get called in two spots. Deuce of hearts on the turn, and we go for a small bet here for some value. And the big blind makes it 100 here. Now, shouldn't be that hard to identify here that the big blind is representing a flush here. Okay. Pocket fives is probably pretty rare here because they didn't check raise on the flop here and they had the option to raise here. So when this player chooses not to raise here, we can pretty much eliminate pocket fives and queen jack from the range. The deuce brings in the obvious draw. They can have a flush. We go in for a bet. And we get raised here. So this player is representing a flush here. Now it's pretty difficult for the big blind to like find bluffs here. They could have ace of hearts 10. They could have ace of hearts jack, ace of hearts queen, ace of hearts 5. I would say they can't have pocket deuces here also because they're probably folding the flop with pocket deuces. So the thing to recognize here is that we really just beat no value bets in this spot. And we only beat bluffs. The bluffs have a lot of equity against us, but it's very difficult to find the bluffs here. So should we fold here? Well, we got to call 70 to win a pot of 276. So let's just get a calculator out. So if we were to call here, the pot will be 276. So 70 divided by 276 is our pot odds. We have to win 25% of the time. So we basically need like 12 outs to improve. We have 3 queens, 3 fives, 3 deuces, and 1 jack. That is 10 outs. So it's very, very close here. And we can also win $175 here. So let's just assume if we were to make a full house, we just get the full money because this player is probably not going to be capable to fold the flush. So let's say we're actually now calling 70 to win a pot of 270 plus 175. So that'd be 370 for 45, right? Yeah, 70 divided by 445. So now we only need 15%, 16%. So we need like 8 outs here. And we have like 10. So probably should still call this bet. But I wouldn't like think it's the worst spot to fold. The river's a king, and this player shoves for 175. And I think we have a pretty easy fold here now with pocket jacks. Even if this player had ace of hearts 10, they made a straight now. It's just a very, very, very difficult spot. This player can have every ace high flush, every king high flush, a lot of 10 high flushes, 9-8 suited, 9-7. There's a lot of flushes here. Okay, they have a lot of value, so they need a lot of bluffs. And it's like It's kind of hard for them to have the ace of hearts here because they call a flop bet. So they could have ace king with the ace of hearts, ace jack, ace queen, ace 10. But like if they have ace of hearts 9, ace of hearts 8, ace of hearts 7, ace of hearts 6, they're folding the flop. Maybe ace of hearts 5. And I would argue a lot of players don't bluff with those hands. And I think we have an easy fold here with the set. And like being able to make these types of folds in these games is what's going to make you a lot of money. Poker's a zero sum game, and you're stealing money, stealing pot share, making these types of folds against players that do not bluff enough. So being able to hand read and being able to fold big hands in the correct situations is the last tip. So in summary, 3-bet linear, bet bigger, learn to bet fold, multi-way pots, and absolute versus relative hand strength, and learning to fold strong hands. Those are my 5 tips to crush 1-2 no limit hold'em cash games. Any questions from anyone in the chat? Any questions? Doesn't necessarily have to be directly any poker questions or anything. I'm happy to Q&A here for 5 minutes or so before I have to get ready for my poker coaching premium webinar here in the next 15 minutes. And if you're interested in that, if you are not a premium member, you can sign up. And today we will be covering a mistake that I commonly see in tournament poker of players not check raising top pair enough once they get below 30 big blinds. So we're going to be covering check raising flops from the big blind. Last chance for questions. No one's asking any. So we'll go ahead and end this if there's no questions here in the next 30 seconds or so. Hopefully you guys all learned something. Appreciate everyone that showed up. If you can, I think I'm supposed to say, please like and subscribe to the channel, and this video would be very helpful. All right, we're going to wrap it up. Thank you everyone for joining me this morning. Go crush some small stakes cash games. There's a lot of money to be made in these games. I would say every session, how you should start to implement these is have one goal a session. So, your goal today might be to 3-bet linear. That might be for your next 3 or 4 sessions, and review spots where you get into where you're 3-bet linear. And then in the next session, focus on really betting bigger for value in spots. And really trying to, find spots to make a little bit more money, bigger value bets in spots. So take one spot at a time, really focus on it, is the way to go. So, all right, thank you everyone. I appreciate it, and you guys have a great week.